Portugal gets 30 million tourists a year. Stunning coastline, golden cities, incredible food, I get the hype. But after 5 days driving across the entire country, I realized most of what you see online is not the full picture. My rental car broke down on the highway. 2 of Lisbon's most famous landmarks were completely unavailable, and I spent way more than anyone told me I would. This is the real Portugal. Every cost, every struggle, and the places that genuinely blew my mind. I started this Portugal itinerary 5 days in Porto. We landed very early at Porto airport and picked up our rental car. Car rental was 312 euros for 5 days, plus around 500 euros as a deposit. The plan was simple: pick up the car in Porto, drive through Aveiro, Lisbon, Sintra, Cascais, Algarve, Portugal, and return it at Lisbon airport. But here is the first Portugal travel tip. If you are only visiting Porto and Lisbon, you probably do not need a rental car. The cities are walkable, public transport is good, and parking can waste your time. A car gives you freedom, but it also gives you stress. In Porto, we stayed at Pestana Palacio do Freixo. For 3 people, the hotel was around 330 euros for 1 night. It was beautiful, but definitely not a Portugal budget travel option. If you are traveling solo, you can find hostel beds from around 15 euros or simple private rooms near metro access from around 35 euros. From the airport, you can reach Porto City by metro for around 2 euros to 3 euros. Because we didn't want to use car in the center, we used Uber several times. In Porto, our Uber rides cost around 25 euros total for 3 people. Porto was one of the most beautiful surprises of the trip. We walked down Rua dos Mercadores to Praça da Ribeira. The colorful buildings, the Douro River, the boats, and the old streets made Porto feel cinematic from the first hour. If I had to sum up Porto in one sentence, I would say this: walk as much as possible and save your money for the viewpoints. Miradouro da Vitória was one of my favorite free viewpoints. The view over Porto's rooftops and the river was better than many paid attractions. Then we continued toward Torre dos Clerigos, Casa Oriental, and Livraria Lelo. Livraria Lelo is beautiful, but this was one of the overpriced tourist spots for me. Entry was 15 euros per person for the fast entry ticket. Inside it looks magical, but it is also very crowded. So if you love books and architecture, go. If you hate waiting and crowds, maybe just enjoy Porto's free streets instead. For lunch, we ate at Majestic Cafe. Lunch set us back around 25 euros per person. It is historic and elegant, but again, it is not cheap. You can easily find simpler meals nearby for 7 euros or 8 euros. Later, the tuk-tuk tour was 150 euros for 1.5 hours for 3 people. That was 50 euros per person. It helped us see more of Porto quickly, including São Bento Station, Porto Cathedral, Luísa Bridge, Gaia, and Miradouro da Serra do Pilar. But if you are on a budget, you can skip the tuk-tuk and walk most of this route yourself. Dinner in Gaia was around 40 euros per person. So by the end of day 1, Porto had already shown me both sides of Portugal travel. It can be beautiful and affordable. But if you choose iconic cafes, paid attractions, tuk-tuks, and 5-star hotels, Portugal travel cost rises very quickly. If Porto was the beautiful introduction, Aveiro was the surprise nobody warned me about. This is often called the Venice of Portugal, and honestly, it is one of the Portugal hidden gems that many travelers skip. The canals, colorful bridges, Moliceiro boats, and Costa Nova houses make it a very easy half-day stop between Porto and Lisbon. We parked under Mercado Manuel Firmino. Then we walked along the canal, crossed Ponte dos Laços de Amizade, and reached the main boat tour area near Aveiro Palace Hotel. The gondola-style Moliceiro tour was 15 euros per person. Was it life-changing? No. Was it pleasant? Yes. It gave us a relaxed view of the city, but do not expect Venice, Amsterdam, or a world-class canal experience. After the boat tour, we tried Ovos Malls, the famous local sweet from Aveiro. A box of 6 cost us 10 euros. Then, we walked through the city center, saw the azulejo covered Igreja da Misericórdia, the city hall, Museu de Arte Nova, Aveiro city sign, and the lively restaurant streets around Praça 14 de Julho. Lunch was around 15 euros per person. That felt fair. Aveiro was more relaxed than Porto, less overwhelming than Lisbon, and very easy to explore in a few hours. After Aveiro, we drove to Costa Nova and Praia da Barra. The striped houses were beautiful and very photogenic. If you are making a Portugal road trip, Aveiro is worth adding. If you do not rent a car, there are also organized half-day tours from Porto to Aveiro, usually around 35 euros to 50 euros per person. Aveiro was the biggest surprise of my entire Portugal trip. 3 hours here gave me more authentic joy than a full day in central Porto. No tourist traps, no 15 euros bookstore tickets, no 2-hour queues. Just canals, color and calm. If you're building a Portugal itinerary and skipping Aveiro, you're missing the real Portugal. Now let me tell you about the day everything went wrong. On the way to Lisbon, the rental car gave a low braking fluid warning. A few minutes later, it showed a hybrid system malfunction warning. We had to pull over on the highway and call the rental company. This is one of the biggest things to know before visiting Portugal. Be very careful with rental cars. Check the car properly. Take photos and videos. Read the reviews of the company and do not ignore warning lights. A taxi picked us up after about an hour. Then we had another long ride to the rental company office in Lisbon. By the time we changed the car and reached our hotel, we had lost most of the day. That night, we stayed near Avenida da Liberdade. Our Lisbon hotel was around 200 euros per night for 3 people at a 5-star hotel. This area worked very well for us. It felt safer, calmer, and more comfortable than staying deep inside the busiest tourist streets. The next day became my Lisbon travel guide day. But again, not everything was perfect. We left the car at the hotel and used Uber. In Lisbon, our Uber rides cost around 35 euros total for 3 people during the trip. We started at LX Factory. It is creative, colorful, and free to enter. The famous Livraria Ler Devagar bookstore was also free, which felt refreshing after paying for the famous bookstore in Porto. Then we took an Uber to Jeronimos Monastery. Entry was 18 euros per person. It is beautiful and impressive, but also very popular. If you are visiting in high season, go early. Then we walked toward the Belém Tower, one of Portugal's most iconic landmarks, the one you see in every travel video and Instagram post. And this is what I found: scaffolding, renovation material, and barriers everywhere. The tower was completely inaccessible. If you've seen those stunning photos of it standing alone over the Tagus River, that's not what it looks like right now. This isn't just a small disappointment, this is exactly why I made this video. So you know before you go. And it was not just a tower. Later that day we walked to the Bica Funicular, one of those iconic yellow trams climbing Lisbon's hills that you see in every Lisbon travel guide. Out of service, completely closed, no warning online, no sign until you get there. 2 of Lisbon's most famous experiences, both unavailable on the same trip. So before you build your Lisbon itinerary around specific landmarks, check their current status online. Things close for renovation without much warning in Portugal. The Lisbon tourist ferry was 18 euros per person from Belém to Cascais do Sodré. It was not the cheapest transport option, but it gave us great views of Padrão dos Descobrimentos, Mat, and the 25 de Abril bridge from the water. After Cascais do Sodré, we walked through Pink Street, Time Out Market, Miradouro de Santa Catarina, Chiado, Rua Garret, Praça do Comércio, Rua Augusta, and Rocio. A box of 6 pastéis de nata cost us 9 euros. Elevador de Santa Justa was 6 euros per person, and dinner near Rocio was around 25 euros per person. Lisbon is beautiful, but it is also tiring. The hills are real, the crowds are real, and if you try to see everything in one day, you will feel rushed. That is one of the biggest Portugal travel mistakes. Do not treat Lisbon like a quick checklist. Give it time. Use Uber when needed. Use public transport when it makes sense, and choose your hotel area carefully. After Lisbon's chaos, Sintra felt like stepping into a fairy tale, but even fairy tales have problems. The drive from Lisbon took around 30 minutes. Parking near the center was just €1.50. Sintra is one of the most magical places in Portugal, but it is also one of the most crowded. We booked a private tuk-tuk tour through Get Your Guide for €50 per person. This helped us see more in less time, including Fonte da Sabuga, Quinta da Regaleira from outside, Palacio Biester, Castelo dos Moros viewpoints, Parque da Pena, and the entrance area of Pena Palace. We did not enter Quinta da Regaleira or Pena Palace because we did not have enough time. That was a mistake. These are the two experiences that actually make Sintra worth the trip, and rushing through the outside is like going to the Louvre and only seeing the gift shop. If you really want to experience Sintra properly, book tickets in advance and give yourself a full day. For budget travelers, Sintra also has hop-on, hop-off buses. The full-day palace and castle ticket is around €15, which is much cheaper than a private tuk-tuk. But in peak season, expect queues and crowded buses. After the tuk-tuk, we explored the historic center of Sintra. It felt like a colorful movie set. There were narrow streets, souvenir shops, restaurants, beautiful facades, and the National Palace of Sintra right in the center. Lunch was around €25 per person. Then we drove to Cascais, Portugal. The drive took about 25 minutes. Parking under Hotel Bahia was around €5 for 2 hours. Cascais was one of my favorite stops. It felt elegant, clean, relaxed, and very different from Lisbon. We walked along Rua Frederico Arouca, saw Praia da Rainha, Jardim do Visconde, Praça 5 de Outubro, Praia da Ribeira, and the beautiful coastal buildings around the bay. If you do not rent a car, you can also visit Cascais with Lisbon hop-on hop-off routes or by train. Some 24-hour hop-on hop-off options usually start around €20 to €25 depending on the route and company. In the evening we returned to Lisbon and went to Alfama for sunset. We visited Sé de Lisboa, Miradouro de Santa Lúcia, and Miradouro das Portas do Sol. Alfama is beautiful, but it is also very touristy now. The yellow trams, viewpoints, narrow streets, and restaurants are iconic, but expect crowds, especially around sunset. Dinner in Alfama was around €30 per person. By this point, Portugal was no longer feeling extremely cheap. It was still good value compared to many Western European countries, but cheap? Not if you travel with comfort, tours, Uber, paid attractions, and restaurants every day. The Algarve was my final stop and the longest drive of the trip. 3 hours each way. Was it worth it? Let me show you. This was the longest and most tiring day. The drive to Benagil Beach took around 3 hours. We had booked a 45 minutes Benagil Cave boat tour for €20 per person. The parking was free for tour customers and the walk to the beach took around 4 or 5 minutes. Benagil Cave is beautiful. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. The golden cliffs, the turquoise water, the light pouring through the opening, it's cinematic. But here's what the Instagram photos don't show you. By late morning, that tiny beach is packed with kayaks, paddleboards, tour boats, and hundreds of tourists all trying to get the same photo. Inside the cave, you get maybe 2 minutes before the boat moves on. 2 minutes for a 3-hour drive each way. Is it worth seeing once? Yes. Is it the hidden paradise the internet sells you? No. Go early, book ahead, or skip it and explore the quieter parts of the Algarve coast instead. After Benagil, we drove about 50 minutes to Faro. Parking near the marina was around €5. Faro was clean, organized, and much calmer than I expected. We walked through Rua de Santo Antonio, the Old Town, Arco do Repouso, Praça de D, Afonso de Terte, Se Catedral de Faro, Arco da Vila, Jardim Manuel Bivar, and the marina area. Lunch in Faro was around €20 per person. It was a nice local meal and felt more relaxed than many tourist-heavy places. Later, because our flight was from Lisbon at night, we still had some time, so we drove to Portimão. Parking was around €2. We walked through the center, reached the waterfront, had a short break, and then started the long drive back to Lisbon airport. That final drive made one thing very clear. If you want to visit Algarve, Portugal properly, do not do it like this. A day trip from Lisbon is possible, but it is exhausting. For Algarve, I would recommend at least one night, ideally 2 days. If you do not want to rent a car, Lisbon to Faro Flixbus can sometimes be found very cheaply, and return tickets can be around 20 euros if booked well. There are also 12-hour day tours from Lisbon, including Faro and Benagil Cave, usually around 90 euros to 120 euros per person. Now here's the part most travel guides skip the real numbers. Let me give you the total first, then break it down. My real cost, around 900 euros to 950 euros per person for 5 days. Budget version, 450 euros to 650 euros per person. Now here's where that money went. Car rental was 312 euros for 5 days. Fuel for 5 days of driving across the country added another 130 euros. So car and fuel together were around 442 euros for 3 people. That is about 150 euros per person. In Porto, Uber cost us around 25 euros total, or about 8 euros per person. The Porto tuk-tuk tour was 150 euros total, or 50 euros per person. In Lisbon, Uber rides cost around 35 euros total, or about 12 euros per person. Accommodation was the biggest cost. Porto was around 660 euros for 2 nights for 3 people, so 220 euros per person. Lisbon was around 240 euros per night for 3 people. For 2 nights, that was around 480 euros total, or 160 euros per person. For paid attractions, food, tours and small extras, the costs added up quickly. Livraria Lelo was 15 euros. Majestic Cafe lunch was 25 euros. Porto dinner was around 40 euros. Aveiro boat tour was 15 euros. Aveiro lunch was around 15 euros. Jerónimos Monastery was 18 euros. Lisboat was 18 euros. Elevador de Santa Justa was 6 euros. Sintra tuk-tuk was 50 euros. Sintra lunch was 25 euros. Alfama dinner was 30 euros. Benagil Cave tour was 20 euros. Faro lunch was 20 euros. When I calculate our real 5-day cost, excluding flights and shopping, our trip came to around 900 euros to 950 euros per person. That includes comfortable hotels, car rental, fuel, Uber, tuk-tuks, paid attractions, restaurants, and tours. Could you do the same trip cheaper? Yes, definitely. For a Portugal budget travel version, I would skip the rental car for most of the route. Take the train from Porto to Lisbon instead. Stay in budget rooms or hostels. Use public transport. Skip expensive cafes and private tuk-tuks. Choose 1 or 2 paid attractions per city, not everything. A budget version could look like this. Porto Airport Metro, 2 euros to 3 euros. Budget accommodation, around 35 euros to 60 euros per night. Porto to Lisbon train, roughly 25 euros to 40 euros if booked well. Lisbon public transport and occasional Uber, around 20 euros to 30 euros total. Aveiro half-day tour from Porto, around 35 euros to 50 euros. Sintra and Cascais group tour from Lisbon, around 30 euros to 100 euros depending on inclusions. Lisbon to Algarve day tour with Benagil, around 90 euros to 120 euros. And food on a budget, around 25 euros to 35 euros per day. With those choices, a more budget-friendly 5-day Portugal trip could be around 450 euros to 650 euros per person, excluding flights. If you choose hostels, supermarket meals, buses, and fewer paid attractions, you can go lower. If you choose 4 or 5-star hotels, restaurants, tours, and private transport, you will go higher. The point is not that Portugal is expensive, the point is that it is not automatically cheap. Your Portugal travel budget depends entirely on how you travel. So what would I do differently? First, I would not rent a car for the full 5 days. I would use public transport between Porto and Lisbon. Then I would only rent a car for Algarve or book a day tour. Second, I would stay longer. Portugal needs at least 5 days, but 7 days is much better. Porto needs at least 1 full day. Lisbon needs 2 or 3, Sintra deserves a full day, and Algarve deserves at least 1 night. Third, I would book Sintra tickets in advance. Pena Palace and Quinta da Regaleira are not places you should visit casually in peak season. Plan them properly. Fourth, I would go to Benagil Cave as early as possible. By late morning, the beach and sea can feel overloaded. And fifth, I would be extremely careful with rental car companies. Take photos, record videos, check every scratch, check the fuel policy, check the deposit, and never assume everything will be fine just because you returned the car safely. These are the Portugal travel mistakes I would avoid if I planned this trip again. So, should you visit Portugal in 2026? Without question, yes. But go knowing the truth. Portugal is not the cheap, easy, perfect destination the internet sells you. It is crowded, it is more expensive than you think, and some days will test your patience, especially if your rental car breaks down on the highway. But Porto at sunset from the Luisan Bridge, fresh ovos malls in a quiet Aveiro canal, fado music drifting through Alfama's narrow streets, and that first glimpse of the Benagil Cave, those moments are worth every euro and every headache. When you look at both the pros and the cons, Portugal is not perfect, but that's exactly what makes it special. Which city in Portugal are you most excited to visit? Porto, Aveiro, Lisbon, Sintra, Cascais, or the Algarve? Drop it in the comments, I read every single one and I'd love to help you plan your trip.